Good afternoon, Yellow Army, and welcome back to the latest episode of Inside Plainmoor. A little bit later on, we'll be looking back at a 7-goal show at Plainmoor from last season. But just before we do that, let's catch up with the man himself, Gary Johnson. Good afternoon, Gary. How's your week been?
Like everybody else is quiet. The cooking and the ironing and the hoovering, well, part of it anyway. Now we've been, trying to adhere to all the rules and regulations of the government at the moment, and been watching a lot of football on videos, our own games, just to see whether we can improve anywhere. And me, Pete and Downsy, we've been having conference calls ourselves regarding players that we might be interested in when it all starts up again, and certainly for next season now, obviously that is. But we're still hoping, really, keeping our fingers crossed that the season can still finish this season, so long as it's safe to do so.
It sounds like you've been keeping yourself very busy then. Now, obviously, conversations have been going on throughout the week with the governing bodies in football continue to try and find a way through the current enforced breaks. But what it does give us, this enforced break, is the opportunity for everybody to regroup and assess how things are going. How would you assess the progress made by the club during the last 18 months or so since you've been at Plainmoor?
Well, people will assess it in different levels, of course, but from my point of view, from where we started, 14th in the Conference South, then, I think it's been very good progress. Obviously, it'd be nice to finish this season to see whether we can actually reach the playoffs, which we've always said. We've got 10 games left, probably need to win 8 of those to sneak into the playoffs, and we still feel we've done that before during the season. We've got a few fit lads back, so we are hoping to start the season if we can, or if we're allowed to. So, we're looking at that, but we're also, we're in the next league up, the next level up, and I think this squad has coped quite well in this division. And if we was allowed to finish it, I'm sure we'd be, with our 3 games in hand, we'll be certainly in the top half, as I say, if not challenging for the last playoff spot. So I've still got that, in my mind. So I think the progress has been not only on the field but off the field. We've hopefully got our supporters smiling again. Certainly the board of directors, right from the off, from my interview, was telling me what progress they wanted and what they needed, and we're sort of, I think they're happy with the progress. So it's, on and off the field, it's very important that if you're standing still, you're going backwards. That's what they say. So we don't want to stand still. We want to keep progressing, and season on season, hopefully we can keep that going. And as I say, I trust the powers that be to keep pushing me, and I'll keep pushing the lads, and we'll keep pushing the supporters. And I think at the moment, we're okay. We're on schedule. I mean, you can't expect to go through the leagues right up to the Premiership in 4 seasons, or however many seasons that would take. But what we can do is make sure we're building on our team, we're building on our club, as I say, on and off the field. And I believe we're doing that.
Yeah, I think it's a phrase you've used before, and that Rome wasn't built in a day. One of the key assets that the club has had since your appointment has been the impact of a number of young players that have been introduced to the side, so the likes of Sekou Jane, Joe Lewis, Frank Vincent, Jake Andrews, Calvin Collard, just to name just a few of them. How important is it for a club like Torquay to have that conveyor belt of young talent coming through?
Well, it's very important, Don, because you're not going to get the 28-year-old that's got, a family, kids in school. I've always said it, mother-in-law lives in Manchester or something, and they play for a Manchester club, or up that way. So, we have to be very vigilant in getting the players that we feel, or following the players that we feel that we can get. So obviously, the more local for loans, the better, often. Because they then have got more of an affinity maybe with the team because they're around longer. They're not having go home every week, sort of thing, or every day off. So we bring them in, and we need to make sure they're players that we can develop. We see development in them. We see that they're motivated. We see that when they come here, there is an empathy with the club. Good footballers and good characters. They play their hearts out for whoever they're playing. Whether it's someone from Bournemouth coming to Torquay, or Bristol City coming to Torquay, or Swansea coming to Torquay. We need and want the players that show that passion for the football club that they're playing for. And I think our supporters have taken to many of those boys that have come in. Cundy's had a great end to the season. Kalala could be anything. We just need to keep developing him. Aaron Nemain, of course, is only young. We got some young lads that have got great futures in the game, and it's always good to play a part in their early development. And if that helps Torquay United, which I'm sure it will, then then that's been a good way of doing it.
And of course, Gary, this is nothing new for you. You've been doing this throughout your managerial career. It's brought you a lot of success. What key assets do you look for in a player so that you can turn that potential into more of an end product?
Well, ability first, of course. They've got to have that ability to produce what you want them to produce. And then they need that retention of information, and to be able to take that information and produce it on a football pitch when there's an opposition trying to stop you doing that. So it takes a particular character to bring out his best game when people are trying to kick you and trying to take the ball off you and be cleverer than you, be stronger than you. So we need the DNA of our players that we want is good ability, good characters, can retain information, and teammates you can rely on, is what we always say. And of course, a manager wants players that are looking at him in the dressing room, and the players that go onto the pitch looking over at you when you're giving them information. You need to know that you can motivate those players. There's always one or two that you feel you can't motivate them, and they're not motivating you, and they're the ones you have to move on every now and again. There's all different reasons why you have to move people on. Like, for instance, Rory and John Niarty, they were great lads and good players, but they wanted regular first team football, and I couldn't give them that. I wanted them to compete for a place, wait for their opportunity, and so on and so forth. So sometimes you move people on because there's an opportunity for them somewhere else to play full-time football, and obviously I'm not then going to stand in anybody's way. But so they're the characteristics that we look for, and I'm if any of the boys, if I had a daughter, if any of the boys were introduced to me as my daughter's new boyfriend, I'd be quite happy. Maybe barring a couple of them, but most of them for sure.
And having somebody like your brother Pete Johnson on board, who you've worked successfully with at a number of clubs, that must be an added bonus, because obviously you both know what you're looking for. You're both on the same wavelength. Yeah,
it's a massive bonus, and it has been over the years. Pete's been with me through thick and thin, all over the place. My promotions are his promotions as well, because whenever I move somewhere else, he comes with me, and he gets the respect of a very good chief scout, as well as being my brother. And in that way, teams, agents, sometimes players, they know he's got a direct line to me, being my brother. And he gets a lot of calls because they know it's going to come straight to the manager. I also make sure that Pete comes to games. If you see Pete at games, and people might think sometimes, how comes the chief scout? Shouldn't he be out watching other games, not watching our game? I need him watching our games at least once or twice a month, to make sure that when he goes and watches any prospective player that we're looking at, he needs to know the quality of our players and whether he's, you know, chasing someone that's not as good as somebody that we've already got. So that's important, or a position that we've already got, or, you know, he needs to have our players and their abilities in his mind, so that when he goes and watches these players, he knows he's not wasting his time. So that works very well, and you know, my promotions are his promotions.
Okay, so for this week's match action, we're going to be heading back to January 2019, where Oxford City were the visitors to Plainmoor. And one of the players that we've just been talking about then, Jake Andrews, was set to play a starring role in proceedings. Okay, Gary. Well, that was quite a performance. What do you remember about that game in, let's be honest about it, not ideal conditions?
No, to say the least. But we had a lot of rain over over that period, and it was unbelievable that Julian, our groundsman, got the game on. To be fair, but it turned out well for us, and certainly turned out well for Jake Andrews. And he needed a good game, didn't he? Because he'd already missed a penalty at Bath. Was it the week before or a few days before? And he was actually really disappointed with himself. And this is something that I do. Sometimes I wouldn't have a go at somebody for missing a penalty, but obviously that would have been important. I mean, it wasn't that important in the long term of things, but obviously on the day it was very important, being a local derby, etc., and a big crowd. And he was down, and I wouldn't necessarily drop somebody that had missed a penalty or even had a bad game sometimes, just one, because they need to learn from that. And I need to know whether they can come back from it. Well, Jake definitely proved himself in the Oxford City game, because he scored a hat-trick, didn't he? And a fine hat-trick it was. And obviously the thoughts of missing a penalty at Bath would have been the furthest from his mind after he got his hat-trick, and he celebrated accordingly. So that's what I remember most. That was a Jake Andrews week. And hopefully he got in he got man of the match, and he got in player of the week, in the papers. So credit to him, because he's a cheeky chappy, and some days you love him, some days you don't. And I'm sure that's his dad and mum says that, I think. but he's a good player, Jake. He's got a lot. He's a real proper footballer, and he makes a lot of assists as well as scoring goals. So he's done very well for us as a club, and me as a manager, because I've had him a couple of times on loan.
Yeah, I was going to say, because he played with you at Cheltenham, was it?
Yeah, he did. That was on loan, and obviously he was here on loan from Bristol, and then at the end of the season, I had a little chat with Bristol City, and had a chat with Jake, and we was really, really pleased to know that he wanted to join us. There was other clubs that had shown an interest, but he enjoyed it down at Torquay. He'd set his stall out there. People know how he plays. We know his personality, and his prowess around the place. You know what I mean? And his family were willing to move down to Torquay, which they have. So it was the all-round package. So it was a great signing for us, because it was a full signing, and I didn't have to loan him again. He became my player.
Yeah, I think it was a real statement of intent once Jake came to play. And just going back to the result itself, obviously we touched upon the defeat to Bath City. We lost 3-2 up there, and there were a few dissenting voices saying, "Oh, Woking had the upper hand," and all of that. But it was a real statement of true champions, wasn't it? To then go up to your next game, and actually Oxford City weren't far off the playoffs themselves at that point. To actually then win 7-2 in those conditions was a real statement of intent, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And I always say to the boys, if we get one, and you get two, we're not going to just sit back and say, well, 2-0's good, and just see the game out. I want the boys to score goals, and I think all my teams, whether I've had a promotion or not, have always scored goals. And what you have to do when you do that is to make sure you don't let in the goals as well. But sometimes it does leave you a little bit open if you go sort of gung-ho, if you like. But for me, as I've always said, I'd rather win 7-6 than 1-0. You get the same amount of points, but it's something that I've always done. So I've always looked for players that can create goals and score goals, and certainly we've got an array of those players with us at the moment. As seen, I think we're still the second, third top goal scorers in that league, in this league this year, and obviously Reedy and some of the others would have got more if the season if the season finishes.
Yeah, well, you've always said it's an entertainment business, and certainly the Yellow Army were very well entertained that day. Very happy memories indeed. Well, that kind of brings things to a conclusion for another week. However, to play us out today, we're going to be showing with you how the players and staff have been showing their appreciation for our beloved NHS this week. Until next week, take care, keep safe, and we'll see you all again soon.
I'll echo that. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you, NHS.